So I'm starting again. So good afternoon, everyone. So thank you for joining us. We are here to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. So happy birthday, United Nations. So the Center of Global Engagement has been organizing the UN Day events last few years, together with youth representatives to the UN. And because today, this is a special day, because the UN has become 75 years old, we wanted to make it a special event together with special guest speakers. So before we start, I would like to invite Dr. Saul Fisher, who is the Associate Provost of Mercy College. He is a founder of the Center of Global Engagement. He is going to give you a few words. Dr. Fisher.
Oh, thanks, Professor Kuroda. I don't have a lot to offer here, except to note that the United Nations Day is an event that we've celebrated at Mercy College for a number of years, generally under Professor Kuroda's leadership and guidance. And we look forward to celebrating this day in the future. It's a super important day that many people don't even know about at all. It's not a day you get off for alternate side of the street parking. It's not a day that you get off from a college schedule. And yet it's a day of great importance for all of us, certainly any of us born after World War II. We're born into a world in which we only know a world where there's the United Nations. But once upon a time, it wasn't around. And I think as we'll learn today, as hopefully we'll continue to learn on our own after today, the United Nations has done very many great things and crucial things for the world to be in as good a shape as it is. Now, could it be better? Of course, and that will be a question of how you can contribute to making the UN a better organization and engaging more with the organization on a national, regional, and a personal level. So with that, I'll just wish everyone well for United Nations Day. It's a very lovely occasion, 75th anniversary. Some of us would be lucky to live to that age, much less a global organization fraught with all kinds of issues and challenges, both internal and external. We have to be honest about the problems with the United Nations, but as well look to its successes. And so hopefully we'll get a holistic view today, and I encourage you to look to that yourselves. With that, I wish you good luck and look forward to our presentation today.
Thank you, Dr. Fisher. So I just want to say that today we would like to discuss what the UN, what is the United Nations, and what is it in for us. And so we look at what UN has done so far, and where we will go. We means the UN will go from here. And then we are thinking that maybe all of us can contribute to where UN should be going. So today we will have 3 speakers. I would like to introduce 3 special speakers today. So first speaker is, and 3 of them are heavily involved in the work of the UN one way or another. They are shaping the world. And first speaker is Mr. Yale Law. Can you mute? Can you do you see Yale? So he is our speaker today, and Yale is a special assistant to the Undersecretary General Fabrizio Hostchild. He is a special advisor to the Secretary General on the UN 75th anniversary. Previously, he worked at the UN Department of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs in New York. And before that, he was working in various UN agencies, such as World Food Program, World Food Program that received a Nobel Prize, and in Rome. And he also worked in the UNDP, United Nations Development Program, in Beijing, China. And he also worked in political Department of Political Affairs in New York. And he also worked in the UN Office for Project Services. It's called UNOPS in Tokyo, as well as United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees Office in Tokyo. He received master's degree from Sciences Po in Paris, the London School of Economics, and Peking University. The second speaker is Ms. Samahan Nunu. Samahan is a graduate from Mercy College. She graduated in May 2017 with a Bachelor of Science in International Relations and Diplomacy. She has been working at the UN since October 2017. She now works for the Central and Southern African Division in the Department of Political and Peace Building Affairs and the Department of Peace Operations. Samahan provides professional support to the Office of the Special Envoy of the Secretary General for the Great Lakes region at the UN headquarters and the Great Lakes team. Now, the third speaker is Mr. Adele Martinez. Adele is Mercy College's youth representative to the United Nations. He is a senior in International Relations and Diplomacy program, and he will be the head of delegation to the Model UN conference in Washington, D.C. in November. He is also the Chief Communication Officer at the Westchester Center chapter of the United Nations Association, USA. So, are you ready for the meeting? If yes, raise your hands. Are you ready? Okay. So, by the way, we want to make sure that we will have time for questions and answers. So, because we want to make this a very interactive session. So, each speaker will speak maybe 10 to 15 minutes. So, if you have questions, please jot them down, or you can raise hands at the Q&A session, or write them down in the chat box. And by the way, this session will be recorded. So now let us begin. Please join me in welcoming Yale Law. So,
hello, hi everyone. Sorry, should I start?
Yeah. Okay. So, yes. So can you invite Adele to show the video?
Yes. Yes. So thank you again for the invitation and the introduction, Professor Kroda and Professor Fischer. I work in the office in the UN that was created last year specifically to look after the commemoration of the 75th anniversary of the UN, and a very special initiative that we launched to mark it in a very special way, because the Secretary General wanted to do something a bit different this year. And that's a decision that was taken last year, even before Corona happened and everything else, that instead of doing only the usual celebration and just looking at our history and our successes, also failures of the organization, he wanted something more of a self-reflection exercise, and an exercise by which the UN would embark in a global listening tour to really listen to the people of the world and hear what are their expectations for the UN for the next 25 years or even the next 75 years, if the organization lives up to that long. But before I start formally presenting it, I wanted to display a video that we had in my office to mark the event, and also to present this global listening tour and this UN 75 initiative. So Alda, if you don't mind pressing it, thank you.
So Adele, yes.
Our world is facing unprecedented challenges. Climate change is altering natural balance. And our precious wildlife is struggling to survive. battling a new era of conflict and violence. There's the disruptive impact from digital technologies and shifting demographics with gaping inequalities. Now, a global epidemic is reshaping our world as we know it. We are at a crossroad at a time when our world seems so divided. Our world is struggling to breathe. For the United Nations 75th anniversary, we set out to ask the world, what are your hopes for your future?
If you could choose one thing to say to the UN, to world leaders about the future, what would that be?
In January 2020, the United Nations launched a global initiative to have the world's largest conversation on the future we want. Discussions have taken place in all settings, from classrooms to boardrooms, parliaments to village halls across the world, in order to reach as many people as possible. The United Nations listened, and the world spoke.
Justice, equality, and freedom for all.
People can really be in peace and with dignity, because our dignity was taken away from us because of our religion and because of who we are. And I hope that we are the last community who are suffering of those problems.
Health is often looked at as an expense. It is not. It is an investment.
We change by exchanging without losing ourselves.
We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
If we don't stop the destruction of our natural world, nothing else will matter.
More than ever before, we need solidarity, hope, and the political will to see this crisis through together.
From what we have heard, the world is not as divided as we thought. The global economy, healthcare, sanitation, education, and the hardest places hit are our top priorities from recovering from the pandemic. In response to COVID-19, greater international solidarity is urgently needed. The threat of climate change and destruction of our natural environment is the biggest fear for the future. We need increased efforts to reduce conflict and violence, and we aspire to further protect human rights. For optimism about our future, we need to look to our young people. The overwhelming majority of us believe global cooperation is more vital than ever.
Every time we fail to find solutions to global challenges, the most vulnerable people in our societies are hit the hardest.
Throughout history, we have accomplished unimaginable things, propelling each generation further than the last. There is no limit to the amount of good we can achieve together to make this world, our world, a better place. The challenges before us are universal, and we know that these challenges demand global solutions. We have the blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. The Sustainable Development Goals. In 2045, the United Nations 100th year, let's see the change we have implemented today that will shine a light on our children's tomorrow.
Change is coming. The real power belongs to the people.
And I want to turn the question inside out as well. I will not ask, how dare you? Instead, I will ask, do you dare to?
This is the most urgent of times and the most urgent of messages. Now must be our moment for action.
Thank you. Thank you, Adele. And thanks all for watching the video. I hope you found it interesting and engaging. And for us, thank you, Davina. And for us, it was really a way to explain the motive behind it, because it is by any means not an obvious process to engage in this kind of consultation on the occasion of an anniversary. So that was a message I wanted to share with you all. But now let me come back more to the core of how the initiative started, why we are doing it, what is the context, and also what is the outcome that we are trying to achieve with this global listening initiative. First of all, I'd like to stress the obvious for all of us, that indeed, as we all see in all our lives, regardless of the sectors we work in and the path we are engaged on, we see that our world is standing at a pivot point. COVID-19 has continued to exact a great toll on our health system and our economies. The impact of climate change is causing greater damage to the planet. Social inequalities, geopolitical tension, and the impact of digital technologies on privacy, on human rights, and others are testing the capacity of our institutions, our national institutions, our public health institutions, our economic institutions, and also our multilateral and international institutions. What we see now is that 75 years after the creation of the UN, international cooperation remains more vital than ever. We see it with COVID. It's a disease that doesn't know borders, that doesn't care between level of economic development. It just spreads. And so, of course, goes with climate change, whereby what happens in one country in terms of environmental damage very quick impacts all of us. And yet, and of course, the list goes on for many other issues, whether you look at regional, international conflicts or social inequalities and so forth. And yet, in spite of this myriad of challenges that are that reason for people and countries to come together to try to define solutions together, multilaterally accepted and agreed to in order to solve it. And yet, in spite of what would be this obvious impulse, we see a retreat. We see, in fact, as the UN Secretary General mentioned in a speech for the GA, that we have a surplus of multilateral challenges, and yet we see a deficit of multilateral solutions. We see a retreat from the usual multilateral structures that were long cherished over decades. We see the resurgence of superpower friction at the UN Security Council and in other fora, the return of great power politics, and also internally in many countries across Europe, in the US and around the world as well, a rise of isolationalism, of a return to nationalism and a shift of a mindset that looks for alliance with like-minded states rather than trying to embrace the whole international community to engage together in a solution that could benefit to us all. And in that background, that's against that background, which was already the case even before COVID. Already last year, we saw these issues of climate change, social inequalities, prospect of economic friction or crises and geopolitical tensions, which is what had led the Secretary General to decide in a summer last year to say, this year, we want to do things differently. This year, to mark the anniversary, we want to listen. We want to crowdsource ideas and solutions from So, of course, we also to member states, and usually does, to ideas and to initiate dialogues, but we also reached out to university, to think tank, civil society, and very importantly, to youth group, because the youth makes maybe 30% of population today, but 100% of the future population. So they are the ones who will be the most affected by these current global challenges. So we reached out, we decided to reach out to all these groups for that purpose. And how did we do it? How did we translate that vision to action and concrete operations? We decided to organize 4 data streams to gather these crowdsourced solutions. The first one is an online survey that that was launched on the 1st of January, which asked only very basic 5 questions. How do you see the world today? What do you see as the main threat to the future? and how do you, what kind of solution do you think are necessary to overcome these challenges? It's a 1-minute survey with only these few questions, and we managed to get over 1.2 million respondents throughout the year, geographically diverse and respective of various region size. So it's a representative, not a scientific survey, but it's a good overview of to get what the people at every level and in every organization are thinking and feeling about the world. The other data stream we used was the UN 75 dialogues. We basically invited people, again, across all sectors to hold dialogues to discuss these issues together and propose solutions, and inviting them to summarize those dialogues and send them to us. And then we compiled over thousands of such dialogue, just like the one we're having today. And with an artificial analysis, we identified keywords, key issues, key solutions, and try to really show what were the main source of solutions and ideas. This was also reflected, and I'll finish here, with surveys done by a scientific organization, the Pew Research Center, which is known for doing lots of electoral polling, especially in the US, and also Edelman, an intelligence firm that does AI analysis of social and traditional media to find out what were the keywords buzzing on the internet and other spheres, as to reflect well what were the priorities of the people. And what were our findings? In September, on the occasion of the General Assembly, which is usually a very busy event here in New York, as you all know, where all the streets, all the traffic becomes impossible and so forth. Well, we still had that GA this year as a virtual event, and our office used it as a catapult to showcase the preliminary reports, the preliminary findings from all this consultation and engagement. And the key findings are so forth. Over all these 1.2 million people we surveyed, over 7% that international cooperation, a country working together to solve global issues, is more vital than ever. So it was an important finding for us as a kind of a counter argument to what we see in the news, to what we see sometimes in the realm of governments or political elites that try to decry or diminish the importance of international cooperation. So this was the call for us that at the grassroots level, at the people level, there is still this belief that the UN and other multilateral organization remains essential. Then in terms of priority, what are the key issues that our world faces today? The first is, of course, COVID-19, with a focus on improving access to public health and the improvement of public health institutions' capacity, especially in the developing world, and to also try to recover better from the crisis by addressing many social inequalities that are deriving from this crisis, all this impoverishment across the world in developing and in developed countries that has been plaguing our economy. So this has been the key focus for the short-term priority, as we found out in our consultation. The second priority, which is more long-term, is climate change. There is, and in spite of some voices in the political spectrum of the international community that denounce or doubt the existence of climate change and the importance of addressing it, those findings from these global consultations showed that the world still cares a lot about climate and puts it as the most important priority for the long term after COVID. And finally, and also as expected, an emphasis on addressing human rights and preventing violent conflict and around the world were shown as the third and fourth priority. So this was not only an exercise of listening, it was also an exercise to try to come up and outsource solutions. Because we did not only created this or established this initiative to hear people say nice things about the UN or how much they love the UN and so forth. We wanted also to hear from our critics and to have very critical and thought-inspiring solutions and suggestions on how to change the system to make it more accountable and more effective. And among the solutions that are the most often raised in our dialogues is the need for multilateralism and especially the UN to be more inclusive. As of now, even though it's an open building that has many visitors every day. The UN still operates in a very discreet and almost hidden fashion. The decision making is not always obvious from the outside, but also even from the inside, where lots of decisions are taken behind closed doors. Sometimes it's as a result of agreement between countries on their own terms. And all these decisions don't always necessarily involve all the stakeholders that should be on the table, especially from civil society, especially from academia, especially from the young people, from all women, and from people with disabilities, and from ethnic minorities. So the importance of becoming more inclusive in our decision-making was highlighted as one of the key issues. Another one, of course, as many of you can expect, is a call for a reform of the Security Council, which is still seen as being reflective of realities of 75 years ago, of the aftermath of World War II, where only the victor of World War II were invited to sit at that table. And of course, that might have seemed obvious at the time, but it's more and more criticized today. There was an attempt to reform the council about 10 years ago that did not go very far. But what we heard from the consultations that we held throughout the year is that people still point to that issue as one of the core reform or challenges that still faces the UN and that still remains incomplete to this day. And I won't go too long on the rest, but I just wanted to really highlight the spirit of what we wanted to do, how we conducted it, what were the main findings. And now we are at the very last part of this year. It's a 1 year long exercise, and we are at the very last part of it, where we are really in a more dissemination mode. We are also in celebratory mode because we had the GA in September, and just over the weekend, we had the formal celebration of UN Day. And for those who reside in New York, you may have noticed that the Empire State Building was lit blue, and that was not, due to our campaign for that day. I don't know for other days, but for that day, if you saw it blue on Saturday, it was to mark UN Day. And on the occasion of that, many heads of state participated in a 1 day long session to reaffirm their commitment to multilateralism, to the UN, to the values also of the UN, and for the organization to continue on this self-reflection exercise to suggest solutions to improve our global system. And I just want to conclude here that I may have already given you findings, but these are only the preliminary findings based on our report issued in September for the GA event. But the initiative, the listening tour, and this crowdsourcing of solutions continues until the very end of the year, until 31 of December. So the outcome of discussions such as the one we're having now can and will be integrated in our data platform and in our final report. And on that note, I wanted to thank you again for the invitation, and looking forward to a very insightful discussion. And thank you for having us today.
Thank you, Yael. So we will try to give you comments from Mercy College to the UN. Okay, now let's invite Samahan, Nunu. So let's welcome Samahan.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here with you, especially because I was a former Mercy College student and attended Ms. Kuroda classes. So as she was saying previously, I work for the Department of Peace Building and Political Affairs for the African Division. So my team and I cover the Great Lake region. So our work essentially is to backstop, assist the Office of the Special Envoy in the Great Lake region. So in that regard, the work is about supporting PSCF framework, framework, I'm sorry, which is an agreement that was signed in 2013. So it stands basically for Peace, Security, Cooperation Framework for the DRC. So it's a region that have known several conflicts over the past years. So it's a treaty again that has 13 signatories, namely Angola, Burundi, Central African Republic, Congo, DRC, Kenya, Rwanda, South Sudan, Uganda, Tanzania, and Zambia. It also consists of 4 intergovernmental organizations that are acting as guarantor of the framework. So you have the African Union, you have the ICGLR, the International Conference for the Great Lake Region, the South African Development Community, and the United Nations. Okay, so they are all helping for the work of cooperation and peace in the Great Lake region. Now, when it comes to the support that the United Nations provide, we've seen lately, the past 2 years, a positive momentum, especially in the diplomatic relation between the countries of these areas of the region, and despite the challenges of COVID-19 pandemic. Government in the region have shown a great commitment to the PSC framework. So we've seen positive developments such as peaceful transfer of power in DRC in 2019 when President was elected. Very recently, last May, Burundi as well. The election went pretty well, and we had a peaceful transfer of power. Politically, also, because of this peaceful transfer of power, we've seen the return of Burundian refugees from Rwanda, from Tanzania. And then lots of events that were coordinated by the leaders of the region to discuss security, discuss economic cooperation, the impact of COVID-19, and so on. So really, with I think the support of the Office of the Special Envoy and many other UN stakeholders in the region, we've seen a great commitment from the leaders in the region. Pretty proactive. They've been pretty proactive in using diplomatic means and all the regional mechanisms to resolve their differences peacefully. So again, recently in that regards, we've seen Zambia and DRC working together in resolving their distant borders, for example. Rwanda and Uganda commitment to continue to process their normalization of their relations. So those are again example of the work that we are doing with the Office of the Special Envoy. So again, in that regard, I'd like to remind the Security Council Resolution 1325, which is the resolution to advance women participation in the peace process. It's actually the year anniversary, 20 years anniversary of this resolution. So something also very important, because it's it's part of the work that the Office of the Special Envoy and UNESCO are reinforcing here. We've seen measurable progress in that regard. We've seen representation of women in political areas such as parliament in the region, but we still have a lot of progress to do in that. It's much better than what it used to be, but there's a lot to do. And the pandemic lately hasn't helped in that regard when it comes to advancing gender equality and gender inclusion. What else do we have? We have also the Security Council Resolution 2502, which is the withdrawal of the MONUSCO mission in DRC. So by 2023, the MONUSCO mission is supposed to leave the country and transfer tasks to the government of DRC. Now, very recently, it happened, I believe, last week, where the special envoy has submitted strategy for the Great Lakes region for the UN engagement in the region. So the strategy has developed 10 priorities, which are structured in 3 different pillars. And these priorities came after dialogue between the leaders of the regions as well as the UN stakeholders. And so the 3 pillars are structured around peace, security, justice, sustainable. That was the first one. The second one, sustainable development and shared prosperity. And third one, resilience to old and new challenges. This strategy is to be implemented within a period of 10 years. It is also aligned with Agenda 2030. Okay. So, but it is to be reviewed every 3 years. Okay. So the next review is going to be in 2023, which will be the 10th anniversary of the PSC framework. DPPA and the Office of the Special Envoy for the Great Lakes will develop an action plan to guide the implementation of the recommendations from regional strategy. Okay. So that's basically the work that we are undertaking here at the UNHCR, again, assisting the Office of the Special Envoy for the Great Lakes. So
okay,
it's a support. It's a huge support in order to help the region for the Great Lakes region to achieve peace, durable peace, and social progress.
Thank you. It's good to hear about positive developments.
Yeah, well, it's part of the strategy priorities. Development are very important. One, durable peace. Just like women empowerment, inclusivity for all. So it's a slow progress, but it is happening. Okay, so it's very important that the nations, with the help of the social civil society, with the other regional organization, keep on working together, promoting all that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Samahan.
Welcome.
Yeah. So now let's move on to the third speaker, Adele Martinez. So let's welcome Adele.
Thank you. My name is Adele Martinez, as you may already know. Welcome to the UN Day event on the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. I am a student here at Mercy College's IRDP program and a United Nations Youth Representative. I have a vast professional experience working in the public sector's offices of New York City's local government, and I've worked also in the private sector of economic development throughout New York City's boroughs. The majority of my work experience has been through including the community's participation within the city's budgeting and legislative processes. And one of my most recent projects have been founding and directing my own youth grassroots NGO at home in my hometown, whose driven purpose has been to making the 13th SDG of climate action more achievable, witnessing immense progress and immense support from the community youth and the National Park Services. I'm actively involved as well in the United Nations Associations, or UNA, Westchester chapter as a Chief Communications Officer, where I design, I plan, I create, I work, and involve the county's young minds in their very own Model United Nations, where their learning of the SDGs will be expanded. The initiative is by the United Nations Association, UNA, and serves to communicate young voices to the brainstorming of the UN. The ultimate aims are to inspire young professionals to becoming advocates of sustainable development and inspiring leaders in their schools and communities. However, this attendance to this event, your attendance to this event, is tremendously appreciated and shows the UN that our community is taking a step in the right direction, and that each and every one of you here today, serves a greater purpose than ourselves and promises future generations prosperity. Today, we will be asking ourselves what our visions are to creating the world we want. Many young people have felt disillusioned by the current state of the world. However, we must not lose courage. Our generations of today and those to come carry the immense potential to transforming global challenges into innovative solutions that are capable of ending hunger, poverty, inequality, pollution, and amongst much more, while also paving a new path to sustainable futures, clean energy, clean water, economic prosperity, social harmony, sustainable peace, and creating partnerships that promote collaboration, action, and progress across the communities of the globe. The inclusion of youth is not just a priority, but it is also a reality. The UN understands that the youth are the present and the future, and that empowering us now will activate responsible leadership and positive change. Committing ourselves to the 2030 Agenda, also known as the 17 SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, is central to global wellness, something that cannot be achieved without you and I. I recall my first Global Engagement Summit in the year of 2018 at the UN headquarters here in New York, and I would like to thank Professor Michiko Kuroda for giving me the opportunity to hear in and participate. Since then, I have frequently visited the headquarters where I learned about various issues, and I still do, and represented the perspective of young people in conjunction with delegates, UN agencies, NGOs from across the world who cultivate brilliant and innovative ideas to global issues every day. And speaking of that summit, I found the ticket of that day. And as youth representative, I feel an immense honor to have access to these various meetings in the UN. And as one, I not only represent youth, but I also represent our school and the best our college program has to offer. I believe in service and giving back to the communities from which we stem. And my point of view finds that it is most honorable to be of service to the public through a variety of ways as a youth representative and, more importantly, a global citizen. Today, here we are celebrating the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. But I believe that in 25 years, we, the youth, will be celebrating the 100th anniversary of the UN. And I have reason to also believe that the UN, or the United Nations, will need us more, now more than ever. And what I would like to see in the world is equality with justice, as this is the foundation for peace. I am committed to serving my communities through the implementation of the SDGs, as I believe that by serving these communities and my communities, I will bring resilience to them, which will consequently bring resilience to society and the world as a whole. The SDGs consist of 17 different thematic areas of focus that intersect at every level of our daily lives. In addition to these goals set for the year of 2030, they serve as a replacement for the previously unmet MDGs. And if anyone knows what that means, it means the Millennium Development Goals. However, the SDGs, the way these goals can only function is through the promotion of collaboration between governments, businesses, and civil society, as these developmental efforts cannot be achieved unilaterally or alone. The goals push for inclusivity and integration of communities at every level of life to create safer, healthier, and long-term sustainable regions. The aims of these initiatives are all-inclusive for people of every background of life, and this includes people who live in a rural setting, urban, who live in developed or developing nations, who are ages of young and old, or socioeconomic classes of rich and poor, or of gender of male, female, or sexual orientation of straight or gay, and across all ethnicities and cultures. In every society, there exists a need to improve ways of life. In our lives, we can think of a variety of ways we can better our standards of living. And I ask, what issues here at home do you think the SDGs can be used to resolve? By an analysis of everything that you see in your daily commutes, or just watching TV, and in your personal lives as well. I hope that you will join me in committing to the Sustainable Development Goals as an effort to combat regression and save our planet's progress and its ecosystems. Due to the current COVID-19 pandemic, our world has undergone drastic changes, as was explained and shown in the YouTube video that we saw earlier. And the Secretary General is concerned that the world is not on track to the implementation of the SDGs. Global collaboration is essential to our human survival, and in 2045, when the United Nations celebrates its 100th anniversary or its 100th birthday, commemorating 100 years from its founding since the end of World War II, our world's fate will be determined. So ask yourselves not what the world can do for you, but what you can do to save the world. As I have learned, our evolution made us cooperative, not competitive. Thank you, and I ask all of you here today to never feel discouraged from doing the right thing, much less never fear from dreaming, and to think globally, but act locally. I look forward to celebrating more with the United Nations in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you. So, think globally, act locally. That is a part of Mercy College's mission statement, correct? Yeah. Okay, thank you, Adele. So now I would like to open the session for Q&A. Anybody has questions? I don't see any questions in the chat box.
I have a question.
Okay, Destiny. Oh.
Hi, yes, my name is Destiny. I have a question, and my question is, how can the United Nations become a better organization, in your opinion?
Okay. So let's take maybe 3 questions. Is there any other question from the floor?
I have a question.
Okay.
I'm kind of like making it up in my head right now, but like considering what's happening right now in France, especially looking at the separation between communities regarding like Muslims and Islam and different religions and stuff, what is the UN doing, like reacting to the situation that we're seeing right now? Like we're seeing in the Middle East a lot of protests going on against the French government and what they said in the recent beheading of a teacher that happened maybe 2 weeks ago or so. But I'm just like curious to hear what you're doing about just the whole stigma of religion and stuff like this in different communities. I don't know.
Okay. One more question?
I have a question.
Okay, Romisa.
So similar to the previous question, I have a question in regards to Africa, though. With the situations occurring in Africa and a lot of the countries in Africa, like Nigeria with NSARS, how is the UN reacting to specific issues occurring in Africa?
Okay, thank you. So maybe about Africa, we can ask Samahan.
Yes.
Right? Maybe the first one, first question about destiny, how UN can be better, and what is the UN doing about stigma issues, such as in France? Can we ask Yael to answer?
Sure, with pleasure, Professor Corda. Do you want me to go first, or do you want Samahan to go first?
Yeah, please go first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Destiny, for for your question. It's the question we've been asking ourselves every day in this office for the UN 75 initiative, but more broadly, a question that keeps reoccurring every year and in every setting where it's asked, whether it's within the UN, outside the UN, in the media, in foreign policy circles, and so forth. I think when you say how can the UN be better, maybe you might want to also look at what kind of better are we talking about? Are we talking about being more effective in terms of responding to challenges, whether it's hunger, poverty, or preventing wars in Africa and elsewhere? So there's the issue of how to make it more effective. There's also the issue of how to make the UN better in terms of how do you make it more representative of the world. And this has to do more about the way the UN operates, who sits where, in which chamber, in which council, what is the division of power, how are decisions being taken, and so forth. So you have these kind of twin issues of effectiveness and representativity, and of course, many others. But just to focus on those two, how to make the UN better? Well, in terms of effectiveness, some initiatives have already been taken. I mean, as you may know, we have a Secretary General now who is Portuguese, whose name is Mr. Guterres. He's the former Prime Minister of Portugal and the former head of the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR. And very early in his mandate, about 2 years ago, he embarked in a widespread effort to promote a systemic reform of the UN to make it better. And one of the ways by which this was done was through administrative reorganization of several of our departments. For example, the political affairs and peacekeeping, which are the blue helmets, whom you may have seen in the news sometimes. It's like UN soldiers, if you like, deployed in war zone to prevent belligerent force from fighting each other. So 2 pillars of the UN system, to merge them at the regional division level to make them more effective, more responsive, have better analysis and understanding on what's going on in the ground. So that's one of the small ways by which we can tweak the system to make it better, early warning in terms of understanding what triggers crisis. So because early warning means early action, and in the terms of conflict, just like in terms of health, when you treat something early, you usually, whatever it is, you usually have more chances than when you wait for at the stage where it's already grown into a much bigger issue. In terms of effectiveness, one issue we have in the UN is, as you may know, as observers of the system, is the fact that it's not a unified voice. There are so many different agencies, departments, funds, each with different mandates, each with different governance structures and different focus and operations. So how do you mainstream that? How do you better coordinate this? Because the UN tries to deal with various of issues in the world, from humanitarian issues to development to climate to conflict and human rights. How do you have a very concerted and coordinated effort to bring about changes at the country level to be effective? So one of the ways by which we can make it better is another reform stream that the Secretary General has initiated in the past couple of years, which is a reform of the UN system at the country level, basically empowering the head, the resident coordinator, RC, as a more independent and more authoritative voice of the UN on the ground, and with a stronger mandate to really push the UN system further into accomplishing projects and initiatives in the countries that it operates. That in terms of effectiveness. And of course, there are many other ways, but just on the top of my head. So pursuing that effort of enhancing organization, making it less bureaucratic, less opaque, less obscure is one way. Another way also is on representativity. As I mentioned earlier, make the UN more transparent. Some efforts have already been made in that regard. The Security Council used to not have any, they could not have speakers at the council if it was not a member state before. And now we have more agile framework like ARIA formula, whereby specific experts can join in the discussions. So this is one way by which we can make the system more open to bring voices from the outside to influence the inside in a more effective manner. Because otherwise we are left with member states only, and member states do have, of course, the political legitimacy because the UN is an international organization, meaning intergovernmental, but they don't necessarily have the interest or focus to discuss issues that matters more for the people. So that's for another way to make it better. And that means for us, bring the voice of the youth, just like Adele was saying, bring the voice of the UNAs, the UN Association, the youth group, have them become advocates. We want many Greta Thunbergs for any type of issues to raise in the UN to speak and generate momentum. And very briefly on the second question about state like my home country, France. Well, see, the UN denounced every act of terrorism, regardless of motive, and that includes this one. I'm not quoting the SG spokesperson, but I'm sure it's what he said when that happened regarding the beheading of that the school teacher. Now, in terms of the ground or the context that led, it of course tries to promote peace. And one of the ways we can do it just at the UN too is there was this organization within the UN called the Alliance of Civilization that was created a little after 9/11, when people were then talking a lot about the clash of civilization and about the fact that it was inevitable for people of different, or countries at least, of different religion and majority or ethnic group to fight each other. So it was kind of a rebuke to that, bring communities of faith together to define an agenda of tolerance, of peace, of moderation in religious practice that would not lead to the kind of violence that we've seen.
Okay, was it okay, Anna? And Destiny, was it okay?
Yes, it was perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, how about the question of Africa? Samahan?
Yes, yes. So from what I know about what happened in Nigeria last week, the UN has condemned the act of violence against peaceful protesters. But again, it's a work of not just the United Nations. The United Nations is an intergovernmental organization whose constituent member states are sovereign states. Okay, so you know, it's we can support, we can help, but we need everyone's participation in that. You know, you can't just come and tell the countries what to do and what not to do. So in that regard, again, as Adele and Hillel were saying, it's we need everyone's participation in that. You know, that means our participation. When something is wrong, you know, say it straightforward. You know, now the when like I kind of describe a little bit the work of what we do, you know, in my region, the special envoy that we have in the Great Lake region. So it's a better coordination, a better commitment, trying to get a better commitment from leaders, you know, and not only leaders in that region, but leaders globally, all over the world, you know. Today we talked, Fidel talked about reforms of United United Nations. You know, he talked about trying to reform the Security Council. We also need to strengthen the General Assembly as it is today. You know, to give it a powerful, a more powerful voice. And to join ADARE, yes, we need to think collectively today. You know, often what happens is that the interests of a country conflict the ideology of the United Nations. You know, and as it is today, the UN accept supporting and getting countries, international organizations, regional organizations supporting civil societies. Well, there's not much you can do unless the countries are willing to work with it, okay? Are willing to go towards the development proposed, the reform proposed. Okay, so I think this we all need to realize it, and the voice that we have as well. You know, when it comes to what we can do here. You know, to voice that we are against also what happened in Africa. You know, in order to have our own politicians taking action, you know, they have a big power here, you know, through our vote, you know, through our voice. So I think it's something very important to realize, you know, not just what is UN doing. UN has constantly been doing, I think, a work trying to support peace ever since it was created. But alone, there's not much you can do, you know. So I hope it answers
thank you.
Your question.
So Romisa, is it okay? You have additional question?
Well, no, I think it's fine for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So maybe Adele, you want to answer the first question, maybe how the UN can be better from your point of view?
Yes, so from my point of view, as a youth representative and just a global citizen like everyone else here today, the only way the United Nations can be more effective or be better is with our, you know, voices to reach them, for our participation as, you know, as global citizens to take action and to, you know, create our own platform to voice our concerns, because, you know, this is a collective effort, not unilateral. The United Nations, as Samahan said, does not take action alone. It involves the participation of all member states, all NGOs, and all societies from across the world. And from like reports on the Sustainable Development Goals report of 2020, the Secretary General said that it does not seem that the world is on track. The only way the UN can be better is with our participation in it. I hope that answers the first question.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So we have another question from Davina.
Thank you, Professor. So I have a question for Adair or any of the other two speakers who can speak on this, but there has been a clear increase in youth engagement in things like politics and advocacy, and we've often been acknowledged as positive peace builders and are slowly moving to the forefront of peace building. And I just kind of wanted your opinion on, do you think the UN itself though was really investing enough in youth engagement and getting youth involved and really listening to our voices enough, essentially, and listening to what we have to offer?
Okay, thank you. So maybe Yael?
Sorry, yes. Thank you, Davina, and that's indeed a very important point, and indeed one of the critical reasons why we launched this initiative this year is to hear not just from the youth, but one of the big focus of this outreach was to get more voices from the youth. But more concretely speaking, how to improve the engagement of young people in the UN. We've come a long way. It's still not there yet. It's still not as the way the UN works, the decision-making process, the way meetings are advertised is not yet at the level we want it to be in terms of having young speakers and representative of youth participate in decisions. But we've made some progress. One of which is the Secretary General strategy for the youth, peace and security agenda. And that's a way that's focused more on the field, if I'm correct, and that seeks to bring the voice of young people in conflict zones to say their views about what are their needs at their community level, and so that their views are taken into account for the peace mediation on when discussions are led about humanitarian aspects or education and development. So that's a strategy that has been established a couple of years ago that seeks to promote and reinforce that. So that's what's being done. What should be done more in the future is, for example, one of the key recommendations we had from all these dialogues held this year is for the creation of a so-called Youth Advisory Council. Yes, I hope I'm remembering the name right, which would be an established institutionalized body attached to the General Assembly to promote the views of youth as a stakeholder that is recognized in its own right. And in that sense, that echoes a bit what Samahan was saying earlier about strengthening the role of the General Assembly as one of the key UN organs. And yes, having this kind of advisory group attached to it would definitely help in that regard. So that's one way. So basically, to answer your question, it's really about this gradual, incremental change, creating new structures, new bodies to the UN system so that there is a mechanism, an institution, and not just ad hoc engagement, but an institution by which that voice can be better channeled and therefore more influential concretely on the type of policies that are then being promoted and implemented at the UN.
Thank you. How about Samahan?
So in line with what Hillel was saying, yes, definitely create a mechanism where youth cannot just speak up, but act, and this maybe with the member states directly, have some interaction at the whether with the General Assembly, the Security Council, to really bring their voice in there, not just meet in order to, if there is change, the change has to be, it also has to be implemented. We cannot just talk about it. So it'll be great to see these youth meetings also interacting with the member states of the United Nations and expressing what they want for the future, their voice. I think it will be a good idea.
Okay, how about Adele?
Yes. So to add on to what the other panelists have said, youth involvement is developing still, as right now we have a youth observer in the United Nations. No, his name is Dustin Liu, and he is representing the youth at the UN and, representing the perspective of youth there. I also am aware of the program by the UNODA, the United Nations Department of Disarmament Affairs, under the Youth Disarmament Program, where young people are in direct connection or work with the High Representative. Her name is Izumi Nakamitsu, and they work with her to creating these documents and sharing their voices on disarmament in their countries and their communities and abroad, and how this has impacted them. What else? And also by reaching out to your local, UNA chapter, wherever you may live, or even if you move somewhere else, there's always a UNA chapter somewhere. And even just in your involvement in meetings like this one, or in UN-run meetings, that's where your voice can be heard. You participate, you attend, you inform yourself, and you share the knowledge.
Thank you. So Yael, you need to leave. Oh, it's okay. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have to leave very shortly, but
maybe would you like to share some final remarks before you leave?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you. Very briefly, yes. First of all, thank you so much for the invitation again. It's a great honor for our office for the UN 75th anniversary to be associated with Mercy College, which has a long-standing tradition of engagement with the UN, including through numerous academic exchange and the internship, various internship that you mentioned. And we look forward to strengthening that. I also really want to call on all of you to please join that global conversation, to take our survey, which is 1 minute.
Yeah.
It's on un75.online. That's the address, un75.online. It literally takes 1 minute to complete, and please add your voice to it. And I just want to close also by saying that I get, especially on the youth part, I gave like kind of an outlook from an inside perspective, a bit of a bureaucratic view of, okay, we need to change the way this organ works, this council works, create this mechanism or establish this institution within the system. And that helps. But what we see today is that the way change is impacted upon the world is not always or only through this kind of institutional change. If you think of the Me Too movement, what it did for empowering women and defending women's rights worldwide, if you think of Greta Thunberg and the climate, the race for climate, these are not UN-led initiative, right? It's really citizen-led. It's lead in many ways, not for all of them, but for many of them, it's leaderless. It's movement that emerge online and develop in such a way. So it's a force that can be used for good or for bad. But in terms of empowering youth and giving you the voice that you should have on international affairs, one way is to do it through the UN, as I mentioned, but another way is just to get active, get engaged, and be a spokesperson for the issue that you care about. And in some cases, as we see in the news, it can have a tremendous global effect, sometimes even more so than going through a more traditional bureaucratic approach to finding this solution. And thank you again.
Thank you. So thank you, everybody. Please thank Yael. He has to go to another meeting. So thank you, Yael. So everybody else, please stay. But let's say bye to Yael. Okay. So we have, let's say 10 minutes or so. Is there anybody else who would like to ask more questions? Or you simply want to talk to Samahan and Adele? You can stay on.
I have a question for Samahan.
Yes, yeah.
So as we know, with COVID-19, a lot of countries have begun to spend a lot of money domestically, and so that means they'll have less to give internationally. And in regards to the UN, a large portion of its funding comes from voluntary budgets. So how is the UN bracing for the idea that it might not receive as much funding, but still able to effectively help out in the communities that need that access from agencies that are more voluntary budget based?
That's a very good question, and, especially in the context of COVID-19. So the UN, as you said, doesn't generate money, so it has to have a member states contribution. When it comes to the voluntary contribution, actually, country have maintained their contribution. You know, unlike the regular budget, which is the mandatory contribution of each member states, this prior to COVID-19, member states were taking were already late in their payment. But as far as I know, when the region that I'm covering, when it comes to voluntary budget, we've had the donor that's still committed to donate a budget. You know, so I'm not sure about the other region. I'm talking about what I'm working on. In that regard, we've been the donors still, you know, respected their commitment, and we still have the budget that we were hoping to get. Probably 2021. This is what we're working right now. Will I don't have the number in the top of my head, but so far, even if we have less, it's not going to be a huge amount. Okay, but again, when it comes to the regular budget, this is where it's more critical.
Okay.
I hope it answered your question, Jordan.
Yeah, that was a really good answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, there was another question about funding. How does the UN balance certain issues, and is there ever a problem with funding when it comes to certain projects? Maybe Samahan?
Yes, of course. I mean, it is a problem when you don't have the funding. You just have to look at the WHO, for instance. Yeah, when the United States is threatening to withdraw its contribution, I think it's going to affect the organization in the work that it does. You know, and it goes on for every other agency, United Nations included. You know, if again, the United Nations doesn't generate money by itself, so it really relies on the contribution of its member states and in the voluntary contribution. So we don't have the money. We are less proactive in helping people that are in need, countries that are in need. So it's a very critical question, you know, and situation.
Yeah. Adele, do you have any ideas about this question?
Yes.
Do you have any creative solutions?
Right. So what I've seen, or what I've seen in the meetings, I know most of the budget for the UN comes from member states. However, if they decide to not commit to break away from an accord or an agreement, there's always the support of the private sector, as we have seen with the humanitarian assistance or the funding for the WHO, for the World Health Organization, or for the Climate Action Accord. We've seen various companies from across the world, multinational businesses, that have provided funding for these efforts in the UN. So it does affect how the UN can effectively function, but with the assistance of the private sector and hopefully like civil society to some extent, the UN could never fail. It can keep going.
This I think this, I believe, when it comes to the voluntary contribution. But again, the regular budget is it's the contribution of member states. It's their responsibility. So the private sector or us cannot contribute to that budget for the regular budget. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. So we have come to almost the end of our meeting, and so do you have any final remarks from the audience or from the speakers? Samahan, okay.
Yes, well, I again wanted to thank you for this invitation and thank everyone in the audience. My final remark will be to all, for most of us, it's to understand that the United Nations is an organization that was established 75 years ago in order to avoid a third world war, you know, to make the world a better place for most of us. Now, as I was saying, it's an international organization, intergovernmental organization, whose constituents are sovereign. Okay, so in that sense, it needs everyone's support. It needs our support, it needs the private sector support, it needs civil society support, which I think in most part they're doing an amazing job. It's what we have here in New York, the General Assembly is it's like a universal platform, and I think it's the only one in the world that gather 193 member states, as well as 2 other state observers. Okay, this is the only place where we have this type of platform to discuss the world issue, to provide a dialogue for us. Okay, so as you know, we were saying earlier, it's very important that everyone understand that, and everyone, work on supporting this type of organization. Supporting the organization comes from all of us again. This is my my call for everybody. We need to support multilateralism, and it's very important today.
Okay. Thank you. How about Adele?
I would just like to say thank you to all the staff and students, my classmates who came here to attend, and also the guests who came here. I hope that this event helps us reflect on the years that have passed by, and hopefully, allow us to, create innovative ideas and act finally to change the world and a future for, our young people to prosper in. I hope to keep working with the Model UN team in the future beyond my graduation, since this is my last semester. And I hope all of my professors are doing well. And yeah, I appreciate this event, and it was an absolute pleasure to do it.
Thank you. Well, there is one more question about is there any legitimate reason for the UN to intervene in a dispute within a sovereign state? And what is that reason or reasons? Maybe Samahan, can you just take that briefly?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
You cannot see the chat.
It says, is there a legitimate reason for the UN to intervene in a dispute with a sovereign state, and what is that reason or reasons?
A legitimate reason would be that both states agreed that the United Nations intervene in the dispute and provide recommendation. I think the International Court of Justice will be the mechanism that will intervene in such a case. But for the International Court of Justice to interfere, both nations will have to agree, that it gives an opinion, that it gives a judgment on that. If only one, then it's not going to be taken in perspective.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. So, Vitrus, is it a question about internal matters? Vitrus? It's a question about intervention of internal affairs. Is that the question? Vitrus? Maybe she's not here. It's a matter of internal affairs. There's a United Nations, there's a United Nations Charter, Article 2.7, says that we are not supposed to interfere into matters, internal affairs. Is that the question? Yeah.
It was the question. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So, as we've seen in many cases, the UN often condemn. We've seen that in Nigeria last week. So when it comes to human rights, when it comes to peace and security, but again, it's very hard to really interfere when member states are sovereign of their country. The UN was not given that power in the first place. So again, it's promoting the dialogue and bringing the issue and trying to do its best to resolve the matter.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we came to the end of the meeting. So time is up. So thank you all for coming. And let's say thank you to our speakers. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your interesting speeches. And I would like to ask everybody to demute your and say bye to everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Bye, thank
Happy
you.
birthday, United Nations.
Happy birthday.
Here.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Hi.
Bye, Art.
Bye.
Okay, everybody, bye.
Bye.
So long.
Bye.
Thanks for a great presentation. So
Okay.
long.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Hi.
Bye, Michika. Bye, Professor Kuroda.
Thank you, Dr. Gersh.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Eduardo.
Okay.
Are you there, Eduardo?
That's what a blank screen means. So long.